Well, tell me something. Have you ever been in a situation where you're doing something you know is not the best for you, and it's really hard to stop, and you really don't want to not do the thing you know you shouldn't do, and confrontation with yourself is really hard? Why is that, and exactly how do you deal with that? Well, let's talk about that in today's Thought Raid. Well, hello there, and welcome to Thought Raid, a show where we take on thoughts and find better ways of thinking about them. I'm Brandon, and today I am by myself, and I am doing something I don't often do and usually prefer not to do because I love having another person help me run Thought Raid. But today, it is Tim's anniversary, so happy anniversary to you, Tim. I'm very thankful for you and your wife being in my life. You've really helped me through a lot, and there is a reason why you were a part of Thought Raid, and I'm very grateful for you. But since today is your anniversary, I am giving you the day off, and it's just going to be you and me, guys. We're going to be talking about the uncomfortable topic of confronting yourself and what that looks like. So, as we're going through this, if you happen to have any sort of questions, please ask. I love answering questions more than anything, and I love it so much that I have spent time writing down questions for myself to ask or to answer, just to kind of keep things moving along. And interestingly, a lot of the details that you normally see are going to be missing today because usually I have when I'm by myself and I'm actually back at my apartment, there's like a split screen thing that will have the list of supporters and then all the event stuff going on. That's not there right now because I have not set anything up for this particular scene where it's just me talking. But if you say anything, it will show up in the chat over on this side. So I would definitely love if you have any questions to bring my way. But with that said, I need to post something here and something here, and we're good. Okay, so the topic today that we're going over is how to confront yourself. And it sounds a little bit weird, but there is situations that we go through where we know what's right and what's wrong, but for whatever reason, actually motivating ourselves to do the right thing or to do the right thing over the wrong thing is very hard. So, like, for instance, confronting yourself if you have an addiction to something, like a porn addiction, or a drug addiction, or alcohol, or whatever the addiction may be. Confronting yourself can be pretty hard because you're already doing something that you know is wrong. But at the same time, it's very hard to stop. And having that conversation could feel fruitless. It could feel very irritating to who you are. There's a lot of things that could stand in the way of wanting to have that difficult conversation with yourself. But that doesn't diminish its importance. And so I wanted to first kind of cover the question specifically, what is the purpose of confronting yourself? Like, why would you or should you even bother taking the time to confront yourself about something that you're doing? And there's a lot of different reasons to that. The first major reason of why you would want to take the time to confront yourself when you're doing something you know is wrong is because, first and foremost, no one's going to confront you like you are going to confront you. Like, at the end of the day, you, not someone else, is responsible for your own actions. Your parents are not responsible for your actions, especially once you're older like myself. The government is not responsible for your actions. Your friends are not responsible for your actions. That very rude customer you had to deal with yesterday is not responsible for your actions. And so the reality is you are responsible for the way you act. You are responsible for the way you react. You are responsible for the actions you make. And so if you don't confront yourself, a lot of people, they have their own problems. They're not going to want to necessarily come and confront you for your attitude or for whatever mistakes you're making. So the purpose of confronting yourself is because you have to be accountable to yourself more than anyone else. And I know it could be very tempting to rely on other people to confront you, especially if you get to be a part of a accountability group. It could be very easy to become used to and comfortable having other people confront you for the mistakes that you're making. But they're not always going to be there. They don't see your everyday moment. They don't see you with your door closed and your windows down. They don't see you when you're depressed. They don't see you every single moment. Even if they're living with you, they're not going to see every single moment of your life. I've lived with a roommate that's gone through a lot of different issues, and even living with him, I did not see everything that he did, nor did I really want to see everything that he did. And that just drives the point further that the purpose for confronting yourself is that you are going to be the only person who's responsible for you. And if you're going to grow, growth begins right here with yourself. And so that's the main purpose of why you want to confront yourself. Another reason is because not everyone understands you. And so if you are trying to grow, sometimes it's best to specifically confront yourself because you know your strengths and your weaknesses and what type of conversation is necessary to get yourself to think. And so if you're waiting on someone else to confront you, or if you're not confronting yourself at all, that change either will be extremely slow or it won't happen at all, and probably more so won't happen at all. But you know exactly what you can and cannot handle, to a degree even. And as I'm saying that, I'm recognizing that there have been many times where I thought I knew exactly all that I could handle, and then the bottom fell out, and a lot of crap happened to me, and I realized I could handle a lot more than I originally thought. So it's not a fully true statement, but you will definitely understand yourself more than other people will, and that is a true statement. And so with that being the case, you need to, the purpose of confronting yourself is that way it's done correctly, because no one else is going to be able to do it for you in the end, and no one's going to be able to confront you like you can confront yourself. And then finally, if you're like me and you want to be able to help other people, you have to learn how to confront yourself, because if you're not able to lead yourself in living a good life and doing the right things, anything that you do towards others and trying to help them is not going to be as effective, and eventually anything you're not facing in your own life is going to surface itself, and you're going to lose respect of other people because you are not living the same life that you are calling others to live. And that undermines any sort of help, even if the things that you're suggesting to people and helping them through is accurate and good. It is not well on yourself to not confront yourself when you know you're making a mistake, but yet you're doing this with other people. You're either confronting other people or you're helping other people. It's just lopsided. And so it's really important. The purpose for confronting yourself is to make sure that you yourself are leading yourself first before you lead others. It's a do unto others as you would have them do, and do to others as you have them do to you kind of thing. It's loving your neighbor as yourself. And that is the purpose of why it is important to begin confronting yourself. But that being said, the next question that I had was, why can it be hard to confront yourself? And that really depends on the person. And so real quick, for those who are watching, whether you're watching this live or you're going to be watching this later, if you could let me know either in the chat or you can let me know in the comments what reasons for you it's hard for you to confront yourself, because I love to hear that and to think about it and maybe talk about it in future thought rays. But let me know, what are some reasons for you that make it hard for you to confront yourself? And I've thought through a few of my own, for personal reasons and for reasons that I've heard from other people of why it's hard for them to confront themselves. But I know for me, when I'm trying to confront myself, I for me, am the hardest on myself. And so to begin the confrontational process is already typically going to be painful. And now, so for me, I don't know what it's like for every person. I know for me, I usually have a internal dialogue that goes on. And most of the time, the internal dialogue in my head, if it's not God, is negative and anxious making, resentment forming, and isolating. Like, you're the only one who deals with this. You are going to just continue to make the same mistakes over and over again. Just not helpful. You're going to fail. You're not going to, the business that you started is going to flop. There's just a lot of negativity going on there. Or if there's a part of myself that wants something it doesn't want, such as pornography, it will say things like, well, pornography is not that bad. Like, there's no problem with it. You can do that and no one's watching. You're not hurting anyone. These are the internal things that go on the inside of me. I know that not everyone has an internal dialogue such as myself. Sometimes I've heard people have what is called like white noise, like just either like a whole bunch of voices going on so much that it's hard to figure out amongst all those different voices which one to even hear or listen to or whatever. It's just a lot going on up there. Or like they call it the council, where there are like multiple different voices and all of them are negative and all of them are like condemning the person. For me, it's typically one voice that speaks to me, and it always makes sense so long as I keep it in my head. And so confronting myself can sometimes be hard because I don't know sometimes like where what I'm hearing is truly something that needs to be considered, or if it's just me trying to beat myself down. And so it is already painful enough to address that, let alone, like, I don't even know where to begin to start. And so for me, that's one reason why it could be hard to confront myself. Sometimes I think for other people that it could be hard to confront themselves because confronting yourself would mean that you're wrong. And that's even for me too, that you're wrong in something that you really feel sure about. And so if you confront yourself in an area that you believe that you're wrong, then the question immediately comes, how many other places am I wrong? And how deep does this rabbit hole go? And that's terrifying, honestly, to have to question everything that you think to be right. That's terrifying, and I think a lot of people don't even want to touch that because they would have to face the reality potentially of how many lives have they hurt in doing what they think is right. It could be very hard to want to confront that if you're wrong. I think some other reasons that come into why it's hard to confront yourself is probably by confronting yourself, that means you have to put away things you know you really like. And it's time to walk away from that, but you really don't want to walk away from it because it feels so good. Like, for instance, eating healthier. Sometimes it could be really hard to confront yourself about eating healthier because Unhealthy food is unfortunately the most delicious food most of the time. Super easy. I love any form of fried potato, French fries, hash browns. Um, I love ice cream. I love sugary things. It's so delicious. And so to confront yourself means you're going to have to take some of those things you've loved so well and walk away from it. And so you really don't want to get to the confrontational process because you don't even know where to begin on the other end of it. So why start when it means it's going to mean pain on your end to leave that delicious food that you love so much? But that doesn't change the fact that you need to confront yourself that you're living an unhealthy life, eating too much food that's unhealthy for you, or just in general eating too much food, period. Um, and that could be another reason why it's hard to confront yourself. What if I'm wrong? I have to leave this thing that I really like. I already don't know what is right or wrong in this situation. All of these things can make it hard to want to confront yourself. But that doesn't change the fact that you still have to confront yourself. And so, with that said, there is a right way to confront yourself, and there is a wrong way to confront yourself. And before we go into the right way, I like to start with the wrong way and then work our way into the right way. So what are some bad ways of which you confront yourself that is just flat out not helpful? And the first one, I think, that goes into poor personal confrontation, has to do with, first, you have to address how you ultimately see yourself. And I know this is not specific, but this is you got to get this. If you negatively see yourself, that you've already judged yourself as incapable, as not worth it, as absolute garbage or trash, you're already not going to confront yourself well, because you are already putting yourself down into the list of, I'm not worth confronting because I am not worth it. I am absolute trash. I'm already a terrible person. Like, you're not going to want to improve yourself if you believe yourself. Why would anyone want to spend time building up garbage? There's just no reason. And so if you view yourself as trash, you're not going to want to spend any time, because it's already exhausting enough living under your personal belief of how terrible you are, to even try to improve garbage. But the fact of the matter remains that you are not garbage. Even though you have probably made lots of mistakes and having to face it is an exhausting process, doesn't mean that you cannot improve and that you're not already intrinsically valuable. So to begin to even try to confront yourself, first we got to work on how you view yourself. Because that way, you now know there is purpose and value in confronting yourself. And so that's really important. I've known people that do not have a high opinion of themselves because of the mistakes that they've made, and the mistakes are legitimate, and the people have been hurt, and it is really bad. But we are not just merely the sum of all of our actions. We are something deeper than just our actions. There is more to us than that. And I think a lot of times we pick up views of ourselves based out of what other people have said about us, especially what our family has said about us. It's really easy to internalize what our mom or our dad has mentioned to us. And now we view ourselves in that lens. Sometimes we have good parents and they say positive things. Sometimes we have bad parents and they say negative things about us. And sometimes we have seductive parents, or parents that are abusive in other ways, that say positive things about us, but they have nothing to do with who we are. And we hold ourselves to standards that are unrealistic entirely. And so wherever you're coming from, I feel like one important step to the process of confronting yourself is to see yourself in a positive light for who you are. And you got to know that you are valuable and worth the time of personal confrontation. and that there is benefit to that on the other side. It's not just going to be pain and nothing but pain and no reward. When you begin to confront yourself in the areas where you know you can do better, there is growth on the other end. There is a better life to be lived. There is better friendships to be had. And sometimes the process is going to be lengthy because of the fact that you've spent a long time living selfishly. But that does not mean that there's an end to that and then there's good on the other side. And it also technically does not mean that you're not going to have to, continuously confront yourself, because we are generally broken people. Even the best of people have mistakes, and those mistakes need to be confronted no matter how good of a person you are. No one is perfect on this earth. But that's another story. Other ways that are bad to confront yourself is to be extremely hard or verbally abusive with yourself. Calling yourself an idiot. Calling yourself just negative things. Stupid. You're always going to keep making those mistakes. You're never going to achieve whatever. Like, rehearsing these specific things in your head is not a good way of confronting yourself. That is a good way of getting yourself stuck. You've got to be kind and understanding with yourself. If you're going to say something, oh, hey there, Deathbane, good to hear from you. If you're going to say things that are a little bit more rough and tough with yourself, you want to give yourself grace in what you're saying, and in making sure that it's in a way that it is, like, if you're going to call yourself like a wimp or something, it's got to be done in such a way that there's a negative way about going about that, and then there's a sarcastic way where you, in the back of your head, know that that's not truly who you are. But in general, if you're going to confront yourself, a bad way of doing that is being verbally abusive with yourself, or any other form of abusive with yourself, to be honest. But primarily verbally abusive is what I'm thinking, because who wants to, if you don't enjoy being verbally abused by another person, why are you being verbally abusive with yourself? That's not going to be a helpful way that's going to make you want to be personally confrontational when you know you need to do better, because it is already exhausting enough to try to grow through your mistakes. It is even more exhausting that every time you make a mistake, your personal talk goes along the lines of, you're terrible. You're never going to succeed at this. You absolutely are trash, whatever. It goes back to that first part of how you view yourself. If you already view yourself negatively, you're not going to want to personally confront yourself. So if you add on top of that a layer of self-deprecation, of verbal abuse, calling yourself negative things and believing it, that is not helpful when you're trying to personally confront yourself. And I feel like there's probably a third one that I can think of here. If you guys are watching, let me know specifically, what are some bad ways that you know are bad ways of confronting yourself, because that's currently what I'm talking about, the topic that I'm talking about. So, like you, Deathbane, is there anything you were specifically thinking about in this moment of, like, bad ways of confronting yourself? Because I'd love to look that over real quick. But so we've got how you view yourself. It needs to be positive. If it's negative, bad way of confronting yourself. Verbally abusive. I think another bad way of confronting yourself is allowing room for excuses. Oh, addressing something you're not even sure about yourself. Interesting. Addressing something that you're not even sure about yourself. I guess trying to confront yourself when you don't even know the full facts, you would probably want to learn about that and talk about it with friends, family, and God first before confronting yourself. So I guess I can see what you're saying in that. That's interesting. But going back to what I was thinking about, so, like, Bad ways. Allowing space for constant excuses is a bad way for confronting yourself. So if when you're trying to confront yourself, you're saying, "Well, I'll leave that to tomorrow me," that's tomorrow me's problem. That's I don't really have to deal with that. It's okay. Like the word for this I'm trying to come up with is giving yourself too much grace. Like if you're making mistakes, there is a degree of being too harsh with yourself, but there is also a degree of being too soft on yourself. Because if what you're doing is truly wrong, it does need to truly stop. And the sooner you can stop it, the faster you can heal and grow. So giving yourself constant excuses, it's one thing to recognize why you're doing as you're doing. It's another thing to stop there and let that become your ceiling. So don't allow spaces for excuses as to why you're pretty much the best. I love that. Don't allow yourself excuses for why you can just stay where you're at, because as long as there is an excuse for you to be making the mistakes that you're making, you're going to continue to make those mistakes because there's not going to be the pressure needed to grow. So if you can put something off to tomorrow, chances are you're going to put something off to tomorrow, and the problem is tomorrow never comes. It's always in the future, always outside of your reach, but ever present. And so you want to work on things today. And I think another area, and last one I'm going to bring up before moving on to good ways to confront yourself. I think a last area that's not healthy when it comes to personal confrontation is to put the expectation to change everything all at once. Like to change multiple things at once, like to confront, go here. Like sustainable change happens one step at a time. So you have one particular area that you're focusing really good on, that you can grow on, giving yourself 10 specific areas you're going to confront yourself on. It could turn into a never-ending... People really do have a never-ending list of areas that they can grow in. And as important it is to grow as much as possible as you can, you truly do need to work on certain areas more at a time. While you don't want to make excuses, there are certain areas where you do need to focus on, but you want to make sure that you focus really good at one area at a time at the least. If you have the energy to focus on a couple areas, great. Like, for instance, just as a point of reference, when I received constructive criticism on how to improve thoughtraid, there were multiple areas that were presented that could be grown on. But since they were all united under one topic of improving thoughtraid, I was able to work on multiple areas at once and grow them. This is just an idea of just being confronted in general about how to grow things, but when it translating that into specific personal growth, there could be tangent places to a main area that could be worked along with the big picture of one area that you're trying to grow on. And so splitting your focus into major areas, separate areas of trying to grow, that is hard to confront yourself when you're trying to confront every single possible thing that is wrong with you, because that list can honestly be endless. So I would say focus on confronting a specific area at a time, whether that be I'm going to focus on this area today and another area tomorrow. Fine. In the area of like, I'm going to be changing my diet. Okay. Rather than I'm going to cut out everything sweet and everything fatty and everything carb-laden, why don't instead we confront our excessive use of sweet tea and all the caffeine that's involved with that and switch to water and just focus on water? Okay, next time, instead of having, focusing on removing everything potato in my life, let's focus on the things that are the most carbiest and replace them with something less. Just examples of better ways of doing that. And so with that said, so those are examples of bad ways to confront yourself. What are finally good ways to confront yourself. That would make it so that it's a lot easier to do it and to work past the red tape of wanting to deal with your own self and your own issues. And so there are some things you could do to make it a lot easier on yourself. And they're kind of pretty much the inverse of what we were talking about the whole time. So when you're confronting yourself, going from the inverse of viewing yourself as garbage and absolute trash, instead, it is a lot easier to confront yourself when you realize your value and your importance in other people's lives, in the world around you. When you see the difference that you can make in someone's life, like if you make a difference in a brother's life or a sister's life or in your son or daughter's life or in your parent, however that may look, when you realize that you make a difference, then that gives you the energy necessary to confront yourself, because you recognize that if you don't confront yourself, people are going to continue to get hurt, and you're going to have a harder time with the relationships that are most valuable to you. So seeing yourself as you do make a difference, you are important. Not to say that you are the most important thing in the world, I'm not talking about that extreme, but in a humble sense that you are not just an island to yourself. That will give you the strength necessary to wake up and like, okay, I failed in this area yesterday, so we're going to work in this today because I want to have better relationships. I want to have a better job. I want to have a better life in general. So seeing yourself as valuable and seeing that you do make a difference helps. The inverse of being harsh with yourself, being kind and patient and gentle with yourself, makes a huge difference when you're trying to confront yourself. If you are doing the best that you can, and you honestly know that you're doing the best that you can, and you make a mistake, recognizing all the areas which you have succeeded for in the past, and giving yourself grace in the moment to pick yourself back up and to continue moving forward is important when it comes to confronting yourself. Imagine this externally real quick. If there was a person in your life who was patient with you, who was kind and understanding, who would tell you the truth no matter what, but they would love you through the whole process, wouldn't it be easy to go to that person when you make a mistake for help? If you can say yes to that, now internalize that. Are you the type of person to yourself that you would want to have in your life? And if you can move towards that direction where you are giving yourself grace, but at the same time you're being open and honest with yourself, you're not mincing words, you're not lying to yourself, which that is another problem in and of itself when you're confronting yourself. If you're not honest with how you feel, if you are denying how you feel when you're trying to confront, if you are pretending like, these things are not a problem, not a good way to confront yourself, because you wouldn't want to go to someone who's lying to you. Why would you lie to yourself? That said, being the kind of person that you would want to go to for confrontation, someone who's loving, someone who's patient, someone who's kind, you would want to be that for yourself. That would make it a lot easier when it comes time to face the shortcomings in your life, because you're not going to rip yourself from limb to limb over the littlest mistake that you make. And that makes it a lot easier to self-reflect, because that pain, that condemnation, that abuse is no longer there. So that's a good way of making it easier. I'm not saying that it's just snap your fingers easy to immediately stop being hard with yourself. It does take conscious effort to catch yourself when you're self-deprecating, when you're being abusive with yourself. It's not easy, but it is possible. And so you want to catch yourself in the moment when you feel tempted to become hard on yourself, and instead, how would I want to be addressed in this? And then to be that to yourself and to take the thoughts that are abusive, that are negative, that are swirling around there captive, and replace them with the inverse, and the truth of the situation. So that's another way that you can be better confrontational with yourself. And then again, going back to the inverse of too many excuses. The inverse of that is truthfulness and a honest examination of where you're at. Which again, that's part of the problem why people usually don't want to confront themselves, because it requires the painful examination of where you're actually at. But that's still a necessary part of confronting yourself. If when you confront yourself, you edit the truth and you downplay the severity of the situation, that again is just going to move you away from properly confronting yourself. The truth is uncomfortable. You're never going to fully be comfortable confronting yourself. So you have to be aware and ready to speak the truth in your life of what you know is wrong and to not sugarcoat it. There is ways that you can tell yourself that you failed and this needs to be changed that doesn't necessarily end in self-deprecation or problems of that nature or verbal abuse. You can be just as easy as, Brandon, I'm just speaking to myself thinking in this moment, you really failed when you talk to that person rudely, not considering their value. And you need to do better. And you can do better. But this specific way that you talk to them has to change. You know, you have to confront yourself, because the reality in this situation that I'm making up is I would have spoken to someone in a way that would be not considerate of the value of who they are, and it could have hurt them. And so I have to recognize that fully, that this was not okay. Not, well, the person really deserved it, so, you know, they get what they deserve. No, that's taking responsibility out of your hands and putting it onto someone else when it's still your responsibility. Again, going back to what I said in the beginning of this thought raid, you are responsible first and foremost for yourself. You cannot put your responsibility onto other people, because at the end of the day, I don't know, you're not going to be judged based off of what someone else did to you, but how did you respond to it? And that is something that you have control. Your response to what life you have, the cards that you were given, the way people will treat you, that is in your territory. Sometimes people make it easy, and sometimes people make it very hard. And sometimes you may be born in a first world country. Well, sometimes to say you be born again in another place, but some people are born in a great country, some are not. And regardless of where you're at, we still have our own free will agency that we are responsible for, regardless of how hard life is on us. So you have to be sober-minded and truthful and honest with yourself when you're confronting yourself. So that way you can make proper changes, not to sugarcoat things, but to say it exactly as it is. And so that's a good way of confronting yourself. And then, when all else fails, well, actually not when all else fails, I really recommend this. A good way of confronting yourself, and this is multifaceted, so I'm going to hit each part. First is, I really recommend externally processing what it is you're confronting yourself about, like what thoughts, talking out the thoughts that are in your head aloud, and responding to them when you're alone. Because oftentimes you can catch yourself in bad thinking if you can get it out of your head. a lot of things make sense so long as they stay up here. But the minute you speak out the thought, it no longer makes sense. There's just a power to it. And this is something where I really suggest knowing God in and speaking and like having a relationship with God, because you're not, instead of just flat out talking to yourself, oftentimes what I do when I'm alone is I'm talking my thoughts out to God as he's listening to me, which he is constantly doing. And I can process my thoughts with him. And so it's getting my thoughts out of my head, but instead of me just speaking to the void, I'm now speaking to God. And it's not the same as I'm just babbling to myself or like I'm insane. I am speaking to God, and if you don't believe in God, I still recommend self-talk. Regardless if you believe in him or not, I still think there is a power to not keeping things in your head. And so just taking that time to get it from here out your mouth can really help you examine what you're thinking. Or if you're not willing to do that, instead write it down. I recommend journaling. Journaling, I honestly did not know the purpose or if it was even worth it to journal until Tim gave me a journal. And I remember when he gave me that journal, I was so mad because I'd spent several years of my life suggesting to have a journal and never got it, and so many days I could have journaled about things and never did. And I was like, ugh, I've already wasted this much of my life without journaling. I don't need a journal now. I'll just continue throughout my life without a journal. There's just no purpose. And I remember writing about in that journal like how I wanted to rip the pages and burn the book entirely. But then I settled into utilizing it, and it actually turned out to be very helpful to journal things because it helped me process certain things in my head that otherwise were not getting processed. And there was some things I couldn't even process until I penned it on paper. So I do recommend, if you're not comfortable yet with talking aloud about what your thoughts are when you're alone, at least journal and get those thoughts out there so you can see what's in your head and then critically examine it. It really does make a difference. And then also connected to this external processing, and equally as important, is in order to confront yourself, a good way to do that is to confront yourself with a friend that you can trust. Because sometimes at the end of the day, you can write about it, you can talk to God about it, but until you talk with a friend about it, it doesn't necessarily stick. And so having that third person or second person accountability, however you want to look at it, really does make all the difference. And sometimes they don't even have to respond. Sometimes they just have to listen so you can get your thoughts out there so you're not clinically insane. It really has helped me. Sometimes I don't need my friends to give me the answer. I just have to verbalize what's on my head. And having another person there gives me the strength and the courage necessary to confront myself and to talk, process what's on my mind, and to realize the stupidity of what I was thinking. And realize, oh, wow, okay, yeah, that's not me. That's not smart. That's not whatever. And then I can move on from there. Oh, and that's really important. Bonus factor. When confronting yourself, understand that you are not simply just one being. I know this sounds a little esoteric, but work with me here. This is a psychologically backed thing. You have the id, the ego, and the superego. But us as Christians understand it as you have your spirit, your soul, and your body. And so if you have low self-esteem and you view yourself as trash because of the mistakes that you've made, understand that there is a part of you that will forever, never-ending crave whatever is the fastest, most pleasurable, unhealthy thing possible. We call that the flesh. And so no matter how good of a person you are, you will always have a part of yourself that wants what's not healthy. It wants the most fastest possible result, and you're going to have to daily crucify that part of yourself. It's not going away until the day that you die. It will always be there because it is your unthinking, carnal, whatever I want to get now immediately and feel good about it. Flesh, the part you can see, smell, taste, whatever. That's always a part of you. You're always going to have a dark side of yourself. If someone tries to put people into boxes and say, well, that person is a bad person and they deserve X, Y, and Z, everybody has a dark side. And especially probably the people that pretend that they have no dark side whatsoever have the darkest side possible. In fact, there's a scripture verse that talks about if the light that you have inside of you is actually darkness, how much more is that darkness? And that, I think, is referencing if you believe that you have no problems, that you are a perfect person, and that everyone else is the problem, the darkness that's in you is far worse than a person who at least recognizes the darkness that they have. A little bit of a sobering fact. Definitely want to take some time to ingest and to ponder on that little nugget right there. But it is important to note that everyone has a dark side, but everyone has, so you have a part of yourself that wants what's not healthy for it. And then you have a part of yourself that wants what is best for you. But the part of you that wants the unhealthy thing will never understand. So that's your super ego. The one that always wants the best for others, the best for yourself, is selfless, not self-serving. You have that part of yourself. That's what we call the spirit. The part of you that always wants to be pleasing to God. The part of you also that needs to be born again, frankly, if you've never known Christ. And then you have the ego, your soul, your what we call the soul, and that's the part that's stuck between the two. That's the whole reason for Thought Raid, taking thoughts captive, the place where the battle is fought between your good self and your bad self. So that's why we're here as Thought Raid, because I understand very much so how hard it is to make myself do something when I've got two competing voices in my head constantly. One that wants me to be anxious and angry and to go for whatever feels good, and the other part of me that's like wants to be selfless and loving and all that kind of stuff. And how do you determine which one is right, and how do you feed one and starve the other? That's a part of every part of us. And so that's really good to know when you're confronting yourself, moving forward, that there's just always going to be a part of you that wants what's unhealthy. And that does not mean that you're a bad person. That does not mean if you've had thoughts where you wanted to murder someone, if you had thoughts where you wanted to do something you know is wrong, that does not suggest that you're a terrible person. That just means you're a normal human being. And when you're confronting yourself, it's good to know that that part of you is going to be there, and you're going to have to address that part and to bring it into captivity to the other part of yourself that always wants what's right. So good thing to know when you're confronting yourself. So essentially, be the type of person that you would want to be if you ever needed to confront yourself. You know, be loving, be kind, be patient, be truthful, to the best of your ability, and to continue to work on that. Know that you are not an island to yourself, that you do affect other people's lives. And keep that in mind when it comes time to confront yourself. So that way it is a lot easier and there's more energy to confront yourself because you know you make a difference, and you truly do. I have a friend who oftentimes grapples with whether or not he actually makes a difference in the world. But because of how he has affected my life, and because of all the people that I minister to and the times that I've used him as an example, his life, even though he doesn't really go far from where he lives, has already affected thousands upon thousands of people. You really don't know the extent of your life and how it affects other people. If you affect people positively, that story will perpetuate from person to person. People talk. If you affect people negatively, that story also has the ability to perpetuate person to person. You're not an island to yourself. Not even a person who is an invalid is an island to themselves. They still have lives that they affect positively and negatively. So it's good to keep that in mind soberly, that you are valuable, that you are important, you do make a difference, regardless if you stay in one place all your life or you've traveled abroad, whether you're a janitor or the president of the United States. Every person's life makes a big difference. So that's important to note. And be truthful with yourself. Be honest. Be upfront. You want to be the person that you'd want to have confront you. And to know that confrontation is going to be a regular part of your life. So be honest. Don't make excuses for yourself. Look at the situation soberly for what it is, and then know that there is hope, and you can grow from there. There is always room for growth and hope and change, so long as there is breath in your lungs. And so that's a good thing to know. And then finally, externally process. Don't keep all the confrontation just merely inside of you. Talk it out with you when you're alone. Talk to God about it, especially. Write it down. Write it down in your journal, and talk about it with other people. All of those things make it a lot easier to want to confront yourself. And so, yeah, that is how to be confrontational with yourself. And I have really enjoyed this. I hope you guys have enjoyed it like I've enjoyed it. So if you guys have any other questions from this point, or any thoughts on all the things we talked about, let me know. Especially if you're watching this after this is live, let me know in the comments. I will be paying attention to the comments best I can. And I will do my best to respond. And if there's something that you bring up that I feel like I can make into a whole separate thought raid by itself, I'm always looking to do that. My goal as a leader of Thought Raid is to serve you guys. So if you have any questions or concerns or problems, please bring them up, so that way I can better serve you and help you with your own whatever it is you're going through, be it personal confrontation or confronting another person, confrontating another person, whatever it may be. That would be awesome. I would love to help you with that. And if this stream has really blessed you, please consider subscribing to us, liking, following, subscribing, and supporting us financially. We have a Patreon, PayPal, and Venmo. So if you'd like to support us on a monthly basis, there's Patreon for that. And we have special rewards depending on what degree that you support us at. So we'd love to have your support there. Or if you want to just do a one-time donation, we have PayPal and we have Venmo for that. All of that goes into helping us to continue to bring you Thought Raid on a regular basis. So I'd love to have your support. But with that said, I want to thank you guys for watching. We broadcast every week on Monday, Friday, and Saturday at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and I will see you again this Saturday at 4 p.m. You guys have a good evening.
I can see far away from where I've been. He says I see a potential. I see a potential in my eyes. I see a potential. I never lost sight of the reason why you're alive. You're alive. You're alive. We sing Jesus.